In this video, we are going to take a look at all the necessary basics to get started editing with Adobe Premiere Pro. Now, we are going to learn how to turn separate clips into a movie, how we can add transitions, how to add effects, how we can add titles, and how to color correct and color grade our videos. I have also added timestamps in the video description in case you want to see a specific part again. Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here or haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Now, let's get started.
When you start Premiere Pro, you will be greeted with this screen that welcomes you with the message "Welcome to Premiere Pro." Depending on your version of Premiere Pro, this might look slightly different. But don't worry. The basics are all the same. And here on this page, you see some projects because those are the ones that I've previously opened. Yours may be empty if you are new to Premiere Pro. Over here, you have two options to choose from. With Open Project, you can continue with an existing project, and with New Project, you can create a new one. Now, by selecting New Project, we're going to start a new one. In this box, you can give your project a name, and from here, you can select the location for the project. By clicking on this arrow and then on this Choose Location option, you can choose any location for the storage of your project. So now we just click on Create to create a brand new project. As you can see here, the interface of Premiere Pro is made up of panels. In this tutorial, we call this as Preview Panel. This is the timeline, this is the Project Panel, and we call this as the Source Panel. Since I'm in the editing workspace, I've only got these 4 panels right now on my screen. You can have many different options for workspaces or layouts, about which I'll tell you in a minute. You can change the look of your interface by simply moving the panels around. With the left mouse button, you can select them and then drag them to anywhere you like. You see, I drag my timeline from here to here, and then the application tailors the interface accordingly. Like this. And if necessary, you can also change the size of the panel by clicking and dragging like this. In this way, you can create a custom layout that works best for you, and then you can save that under a different name. To do this, go to Window, Workspaces, Save as New Workspace, and in this box, put a name and then click OK. On the other hand, if you think that you messed up the workspace by dragging or resizing panels and wish to restore the original, then you can go to the Window menu, Workspaces, and click on Reset to Saved Layout to return the layout to its original shape. As I said before, right now I'm in the editing workspace, and yours may be the learning workspace, because that's what you get when you first open your Premiere Pro. You can also switch between workspaces or layouts from the Windows menu. So click here, on Window, Workspaces, and in this option box you get all available layouts, and for this tutorial our preferred layout is Editing, which is over here. Now, we're going to import some footage into Premiere Pro. The files you import into Premiere will be collected in the Project panel. There are multiple ways to import files. One of them is by right-clicking in the Project panel and then selecting Import. This will open up the File Explorer on a Windows PC or the Finder on a Mac. And then you can browse through the files that you would like to import. This folder named Premiere Basics is my target folder because it is in there that I collected all the assets that I want to use for this project. So I just select that folder, and then I click on this Import Folder button. Now you see that the folder is here in the Project panel. Now let's click this arrow, and you'll see all of the elements here. Okay. If I want to be more selective, then I can open this folder, hold down the Control key, select Preferred Elements, and then I click Open over here. Now those are here. As you can see, we've now got all the files inside the Project panel. Now, you can switch between different views using these little icons. This one is for the list view. It's bluish because it is what is active now. As the name suggests, it lists every detail, and by sliding this scroll bar, you can find more. Others are Icon View and Freedom View, and by selecting those, you can see the thumbnails and some other details about your elements. And if necessary, you can zoom in and out by clicking and dragging this little button. To start editing, we have to have a sequence. You could see a sequence as the foundation of your project. It contains a lot of basic settings, like frame rate and resolution. To create a sequence, click on this icon called New Item, and on this menu box, click Sequence. Then you get this big dialog box in which you select options or alter some values to make a sequence of your choice. But I recommend you create the sequence using your video file, as through this method you can easily create a sequence with the same settings as your footage. And to achieve that, you can right-click on a video file and then from this list, select the New Sequence from Clip option. Now, as you can see here, I've created the sequence, and it's in the same name, and the frame rate and resolution for the sequence and video file are both the same. I can either select and left-click the sequence to rename it, or I can right-click on the sequence, and from the rename option here, I can rename it. So I rename it into my sequence. This icon denotes the sequence. This one represents a video without any sound. This icon is for a video with some sound. And this one represents an audio file. Now we are in our project panel, and from here we can't do any editing. So to start with editing, we have to move all necessary elements to our timeline. The simplest way to get our items on the timeline is by simply clicking the item in the project panel and dragging it over to the timeline in the desired position. Also, we can select multiple clips in the project panel by holding down the Shift key and then dragging them to the timeline, as we did before. There is another way, which I think is more professional. When you double-click an item, it will be displayed in the source panel. From there, you can move it to the timeline. Let's look into it a bit more. As you know, this is the source panel. And what is showing here is the one that I last double-clicked in the project panel, and this scene will be retained here until and unless I double-click another element in the project panel. So, now the source panel gives a preview as the preview panel does, but besides that, it offers you some tools to manipulate your elements before you take it to your timeline. When you hit the spacebar or the play button over here, it will start to playback. If you want only a portion of this video clip, then you can mark it by adding in and out points. And here I hit the I key to create an in point. And then when it reaches to here, I hit the O key to create an out point. Over here, you can see the selection that I made with the in and out points. Then I can import this into my timeline by 3 methods. Firstly, I do a left-click hold on the panel over here and then drag to the timeline, like I do now. You see here that this method imports both the video and audio tracks of the clip. Second, by clicking on this little icon over here, I drag it to the timeline. Now, as you can see here, this method can only bring the video track. Third, I click on this icon and again drag it to the timeline. This time I only get the audio track on my timeline. You can use these in and out keys to trim an audio file as you like. Let me give an example. This is the audio I want to trim. I've already listened to this clip and know where my in and out points should be. So, I drag this playhead to this point, which is my start point, and so I hit the I key. And then I drag it to my end point, and I hit the O key. So, you see, this strip represents the portion of the audio I chose. And now I drag it to my timeline from this icon here, and now you see it is here. Now you've learned different methods by which you can import elements into your timeline. Now it's time to start editing. The timeline can be primarily classified into 2 parts. The upper part is designated for visual content, like videos and images, while the lower part is for audio content, like music, sound effects, and voiceovers. If you want, you can change the height of the tracks. All you need to do is bring your cursor to this line, and when this little icon appears, click hold and drag it up if you are in the upper part or the video part. And if you are in the lower or audio part, drag it down to get it widened. This is the playhead. You can start and stop it playing back by pressing the spacebar or by clicking this play stop toggle. Or you can hold it with your left mouse button and move it across the timeline. Your preview panel will always show what corresponds to the playhead on your timeline. When you left-click on a clip, it gets selected, and then you can drag it to another timeline like this. And you also have the option to select multiple clips by holding down the Shift key. If you left-click an item and drag it while holding down the Alt or Command key, you will get a copy of that. This slider bar over here has multiple functions. You can left-click hold the bar and navigate along the timeline, or if necessary, you can also zoom in or out on the timeline by left-click holding on these bottoms and sliding them sideways. You could scroll with your mouse to navigate along the timeline, and you could also hold the Alt or Command key and then scroll with your mouse to zoom in or out. The mouse pointer that we've used so far is named Selection Tool inside Premiere Pro, and you can identify that from this icon over here. When you hover your mouse over anything, in no time you will get a pop-up that contains the name and the shortcut key in brackets if available. So the first one is this Selection Tool, and its shortcut is V. This is just like a mouse pointer with some additional functions. If you want to shorten or trim something on the timeline, you can hover over it with your mouse at the beginning or end until this red icon appears. You can then left-click and hold and drag it to the left or right to trim the item. There are some more tools for use inside Premiere Pro, which you can find here. Next, we're going to look at the Track Select tool, and this is it. If you click and hold over the tool, you will get this pop-up, from which you will learn that this tool has two different options, Track Select Forward and Track Select Backward, and shortcuts R and Shift A, respectively. Now I come back to the timeline and type it to activate the Track Select Forward tool and click here, and you see, everything after that point gets selected. And with this Track Select Backward tool or Shift A, I could select everything before the point I clicked on the timeline. So now you can drag the whole thing somewhere else or get it glued to something else you want. Since this is a beginner's tutorial, only the usually used tools are going to be detailed here. The next tool we are going to be dealing with is the Razor tool, and this is it. The Razor tool is used to cut items on the timeline. With the left mouse button, you can cut items, like this video clip, into 3 parts. After cutting, you can go back to the Selection tool by clicking this icon over here or hitting the V key to proceed further. With the Selection tool enabled, we just select this middle part, and we remove it by hitting the Delete key on the keyboard. Now we've got a gap here in between these 2 parts. Now let's glue these together. So, I left-click hold and drag part 1 to the right to get glued to part 3, or I can drag part 3 to the left to bind it together with part 1. But there is another option, which is a bit faster. So, let's reverse this for now. So, we have that gap come back into position now. And now we click on the gap with the right mouse button and select Ripple Delete. This option automatically moves part 3 to the left, connects with part 1, and closes the gap. Let's do the same here because we have multiple clips. You see, this option automatically moves all the other clips back to close the gap. Now that you look here, you see they have different icons, and I've already described the reasons. Now let's bring these 3 to our timeline. For that, by holding down the Shift key, I select the first, second, and fourth, but you see the third gets selected, so I hold down the Control key and left-click on it to get it removed from the selection. And then I drag and drop them on the timeline. On the timeline here, you see that the first one has both video and audio tracks, the second has only video tracks, and the third has only audio tracks. Now I want to delete the audio track of the first clip. If deleted now, both will be deleted. So, I right-click over it, and from these boxes, I select Unlink. Now you see that I can select the audio part only. Now I can delete it alone, or I can drag it to below the second video clip like this. This time, I have a different idea. So, I copy the first video clip to the top of the third audio clip, and then I selected both and linked. Now that both are linked, if you delete any of these, both will be deleted. If you drag, both will be moved together. So far, we've only used one track of the video and audio timeline. On the video timeline, we can stack clips on top of each other, but the clip that is in the highest stack will be displayed. On the audio timeline, we can stack audio clips below one another, and everything will be sounded together. We've already covered how to add in and out points in a previous session. And this clip already includes those points, but I want to redefine them. So, I right-click on the panel and select Clear In and then Clear Out in this option box to remove those points. You can also increase or decrease the length of your selection by dragging the in and out points to left or right. You see, I'm now in my project panel, and my current selection over here is my project. You can see the name of my project over here. Now I click this double arrow over here, and on this option box, I click on this effect to bring up our effects window. And this is it. Here you can find all the built-in effects in Premiere Pro. We're not going to look at every individual effect in this video, but we're going to apply a few of them so you can understand how to use them. The first effect that we're going to look for is the so-called crop. When you look here, you'll notice a question mark on the preview screen. As we are aware, the preview will be the topmost clip under the playhead. We just turn off this icon to see what the lower clip is about. Okay, now we turn it on. So, we're going to apply crop to this top clip. You can find crop under Video Effects, Transform, or you can just write crop in this little dialog box, and in no time, you will see it over here. To apply an effect, hold it with your left mouse button, then drag it over to the timeline and release it on top of that particular clip. And then, you need to go to the effects controls, which are over here. As the name suggests, here on this panel you have everything that needs for all effects to be controlled and customized. You have this scroll bar over here, and using that, you go to what you want to customize. Here I scroll down to FX Crop, and I have some adjustments over here. Please follow me. I'm going to make some changes here. I drag left to 42%, top 23%, right 38%, bottom 22, and edge feather to 50. Then I go to FX Motion Position, and change position to 373 and 520. Now let's hit the spacebar to give it a play, and you see we get this result. You can turn this on and off by clicking on this FX. Crop can be tailored in many different ways, and this is just an introduction. The next effect that we are going to look for is the Gaussian blur. You can find this effect under Video Effects, Blur and Sharpen. This is the blurry background effect that you see each time I show you the name of chapters. Now, as we did before, I apply this effect to this clip, and then we once again go to Effect Controls because that is where you customize an effect and make the necessary changes to bring it into action. I scroll down to FX Gaussian Blur, and I change the amount of blur here. Let's watch how it works. I'm going to turn it on and off, and you can see the preview here. With the effect controls, you can also customize different properties. Now this punctuation is over here on the left side, but I want it to be on the right side, so what should I do? I should go to Effect Controls, FX Motion, and change the positional coordinates here. And now it is on the right side, okay? Next, you see, this clip here that I selected has a different resolution, which is why it's not filling up the entire frame. We need to fill it up over the entire frame, so what we're going to do is go to Effects Controls, and inside the FX Motion, we change the scale. The scale is 200, and you can see the clip filling up the frame now. In Premiere Pro, since transitions are bundled with effects, we should first bring up the effects section before going to transitions. Inside effects, you will find a lot of built-in transitions. The ones for videos can be found in the Video Transitions folder, and you also have an Audio Transitions folder. And among them, the most common ones are disposed of in this Dissolve subfolder. To apply them, drag them over to the timeline and then place them between the two clips. Let me zoom in a bit on the timeline so that you can see the cross-dissolve transition that we've just applied. Like I mentioned, This is one of the most common video transitions that people use in video editing. And it looks like this. Another one that you see a lot is the dip to black transition, and it's here. You see how it differs from the previous. Now, as I zoom in on the timeline, you can see that the transition is equally distributed over both clips, with its center exactly over the joint. If you want a different setting, then you need to select the transition and head over to the effect controls. This number over here represents the time duration. Currently it is 25, but since I want a higher duration, I change it to 50. You see, when I put a higher value, the graphic thing over here changes its size correspondingly. As it is written here, you can change the alignment from here. Now it's center at cut, and I change it into start at cut. Now, as you can see here, when I hover my mouse at the terminals of the transition, my mouse pointer turns to this reddish tool tip, and I can stretch it both ways. And I have this other tool with which I can move the transition to any side. And with the second red tool, I can move the transition both ways, but clips on both sides will be stretched or contracted depending on the direction you move it. If you want to animate something, you need some keyframes. So, I'm just going to show you the basics you need to know about keyframes. These stopwatch icons given in front of the effects and properties over here represent keyframes. Please take care not to click the stopwatch icon more than once, as any click on it, after the first one, would delete the entire keyframes with regard to that particular property or effect. Let me show you how you can make this simple animation. Click on this PNG image of this arrow on the timeline, then go to Effect Controls, FX Motion Position, and change Scale to reduce its size. Here I put 35. Then I put a position keyframe, and then edit the position of the arrow to bring it to a favorable location. Now I move 10 frames to the right. And I click here to add another keyframe. I enter some values here to move the arrow a bit closer to the cat. Then I again press right arrow key 10 times to move playhead 10 frames to the right. I copy all keyframes using Ctrl A and Ctrl C, then I paste them using Ctrl V. I go on doing the same until I reach the clip's end like this. Now I select every keyframe using Ctrl A, and then I right-click, and from this box I select Spatial Interpolation Bezier. Now let's play it. That's all about the basics of keyframes. The quickest and easiest way to add text is by using the Type tool, which you can activate by clicking here over this T icon or simply typing T on keyboard. You can then click anywhere in the program preview panel and start typing. And when you're done with typing, you can hit the Escape key to exit typing mode. And then go back to the Selection tool by hitting the V key or by clicking this icon here. And with the Selection tool enabled, you can reposition the text anywhere you like. You can now find the text on the timeline as a graphics layer, where your playhead is. If you need any adjustments to the text, you need to bring the Essential Graphics panel. For that, you need to go to the Window menu and then select Essential Graphics. This will open up the Essential Graphics panel here on the right. To adjust the text, we need to go to the Edit tab. This is the place where you can do a lot of text adjustments. And you can find the text layer that we've just created, up here. If you want to create a new text layer, you just click over this icon, and on this drop-down list, click Text. Now you can see your recently created layer here and on the Preview panel over here. Let's make some changes to the text now. For that, I select this text layer, and now I'm going to make some changes. I click here and create a style named New Text Style 01. I click here and change the text from Tahoma to Montserrat. By clicking on this arrow, I change to Extra Bold Italic. By sliding this button to the right, I increase the text size to 110. Or I can simply click here and type 105 to give my text that size. Now I click here and do some color changes, like this. I click here and give it a stroke, and by clicking here and sliding to the right, I thicken its size. like this. And to finish it off, let's add a shadow. For that, I check this box, and by dragging it to the left, I make it more visible. Okay, now it looks good. Next, let's add a new text layer. For that, I click on this new icon here, and on this option box I select text. You see, the new layer incorporates all the settings that we've just applied onto the previous text. But we can edit this text layer separately without affecting the other one. So, for example, if I change the size of this text layer, it won't affect the other one. And the same applies for all the other settings, like changing colors, for example. And you can also reposition every layer individually. Now, let's make some shapes. From here, we can also add some basic shapes, like a rectangle, for example. Now I'm going to turn off the fill color. Then I change the stroke color. Now you see that we've created a rectangular border. Holding this grip over here, I resize it. Clicking here makes an ellipse. You can see here the width and height. If you make them equal, you get a circle. Now I turn on this fill. You can align it differently using these options. Like this. I drag it to here. I change the stack order from here by dragging it to down. Now I select this option to create a polygon. But what I get is a triangle. If a hexagon is what I want, I have to change the value over here from 3 to 6. You see now that it's a hexagon. You can rotate it from here. You can change the size from here by changing these values, or you can do it by dragging from here. If you combine text and shape layers together with keyframes, you can be very creative and make some awesome titles. If you are too busy to make your own titles, you can use templates to create them. In the Browse tab of the Essential Graphics panel, you can find some of these templates. They are very easy and simple to use. Just drag them over to the timeline, and they work right away. You can then double-click on the text, edit it to your liking, and then enjoy your text and animation. Like this. So, get yourself some good templates and save a lot of time. Since this is an introduction tutorial to Premiere Pro, only the basics will be dealt with here for now. This clip on my timeline is a little bit dark, so it might need some color correction. And for this, we need the Lumetri color panel, which we're going to activate from the window menu over here. So, I click on this Lumetri color, and it will open up the new panel here on the right named Lumetri color. Since we are only looking at the very basics, we just click over this basic correction and we get this list in which we can see contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, exposure, and many other elements. You play around with everything, learn the significance of all those elements, and find values that give you the best results and that you like most. I think the shot is a bit too dark and slightly underexposed. So I increase the exposure and highlights a little bit. And I adjust shadows and blacks to give it more contrast. Now you just need to color correct your clips based on what you are seeing. Here you have the quick and easy auto option, which will turn your footage color corrected at the cost of a single click. For now, I just want you to know that this is the place where you color correct your footage. And, by the way, you can use this checkbox to see before and after we made the color correction. Now is it time to look at color grading. Color grading is the technique of adding a mood or vibe to your footage. To get used to that, we're going to step into this creative section of Lumetri color panel. Here, in this pull-down menu, you can find a lot of color preset, which is also known as LUTs. And here, in this little window below, you can preview the LUTs. Just click on these arrows on the side to preview the next one. And if you find one that you like, just click on it to apply it. And if you want, you can also lower the intensity by using this slider. We'll now go to the final section of this tutorial. That is exporting the video. So, let's say this is the outcome of hours of editing, and we want to export it as our movie. To export a video, navigate to File, Export, and then tap Media. This will open a new window where you can configure the export parameters. you can see the duration of the video that we're going to export in the left bottom corner. You might potentially export a smaller chunk of the movie by using this slider here. We'll stick with one of the most popular and widely utilized formats, H.264. Following that, you have to choose a preset. For that, you click this little arrow over here, and you get this list of presets. If you want to experiment with more, click on the More Presets button, and you will get a plethora of predefined settings to choose from. If you're not planning to export this for internet usage, I recommend using the high-quality defaults. You have a lot of presets available here designed for various purposes. So, based on your goal, you must select one of these. If you intend to use this for online platforms, then you can choose one of the online presets, for example, the YouTube 1080p over here. This is a 1080p HD project, so I'm going to choose the high-quality 1080p HD preset. If you click here, you can change the folder that you would like to use for the export, and you can change the name of your movie by writing some name over here. As I mentioned, all the other settings are now ready for export. But I do recommend enabling the option here to use maximum render quality. The export will take a little longer, but this will give better quality. And now all we've got left to do is click on Export. Premiere will now export your movie to the selected directory. Depending on the speed of your system and the length of your project, this may take a while.
It's time in this video. Before that, I have a request to you. If you're new here, having subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. And thanks a lot for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. And I'll meet you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.